I was on the computer the other day and just thought it would be nice to share some of the skills and the tips that I've built up using photographs in art. My students the other day were choosing photographs from a selection of mine, and I've got stocks of thousands and thousands of them. Some of them are up on my Flickr site. You can link to them through my website, and you're very welcome to use any of my photographs at any time to paint from, either from my films, take off the stills and so on. I'm not jealous about those sorts of things. Everybody's images will come off differently anyway, which is why the copyright thing is silly, because if you're going to paint from a photograph, unless you're one of these photorealist guys, it's going to be different to the photograph. It's going to be your own creation. And if I have workshops with 20-30 people, as we saw recently in one of my films, for instance, the snow scenes, all of those people's pictures were totally different from the same two photographs. It's great stuff. Photographs are very, very useful. Computers are just more tools. It's like the sponge roller. They're only tools. Computer isn't the be and end all. When it came into schools, when it was first introduced, they were told how wonderful it was going to be and everything else. Yes, they're wonderful things, but they're just a part of our lives, like cars. And I don't know how to do without mine in many ways. I must admit, car or computer, my filming, it's a part of my artwork. Sharing with you is literally a part of my artwork and how I do it and why I do it. It gives an added dimension to it. It's fantastic. Anyway, by the by, let's have a look at what sort of cameras I tend to use from the films that I've made, and look at what we can do with those cameras. But I mean, nowadays things have progressed so much. When I first started making films, it was so expensive. We were using still photography, we were scanning off the photographs and so on. The equipment was very, very expensive. We were having to use big old videotape, VHS and so on. And now it's come right down to little tiny memory cards and memory sticks and digital. We don't have to buy expensive papers anymore. We can take as many shots as we want. We can explore, we can experiment. It's so much freer, it's so much more fun, isn't it? And it's so much cheaper. Let's first take a look at the equipment I'm going to use on this trip. Clearly I'm not using the Canon I'm holding at the moment, but it will include the Canon Legeria, which I will now start using to film this. Right, it's test time on these now. We're going to take my little barrel cam, put a little lead below it to attach to a line so that when it's drawn through the water and there's a lure behind, hopefully we'll see any fish coming up on it. And the GoPro I fitted to one of my older arms. I put on a plastic foam top, and I'm hoping we can drop that down with a fishing rod from the bridges, or cast it over carefully, and it will float down and pick up fish on the way. Let's just see how that works. Now that looks to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to use these rather handy little JTS radio mics for windy days especially. Ordinarily I won't bother, but for the windy days I'll require it. So I've made a handy pack there for that. They're easily mountable, they're quite inexpensive to buy, and it seems to be quite effective. So here we are down on the river, and I'm going to be painting from this view just up here. You can see where my easel is. Camera set up there, beautiful spot. We've got lovely textures to play with here, as well as the lights and darks and warms and cools. Well, here we are in situ. That's the view I'm going to do. I've got my canvas set up now. So, my big camera set up on the canvas.
palette of paints, acrylics, mixing palette, roller, piece of chalk to draw out with, and my set of brushes.
Of course you can buy cheap inks now, cheaper printers and so on. There's still tips and tricks on that as well in what you look for printers and how you buy printers and things. But for me, the photography side is much more creative. I mean, I went to see an exhibition of photographs a few years ago, and they were still in the old world, the dark ages. Weren't allowing digital images. You had to take the photograph, it had to be just what came out of the camera. It's a creative process, they're machines. It's like people who come to me for lessons in art and watercolour, and they've said, oh, you're so much freer, Peter, it's so much looser. I said, yeah, because whatever works, works. There are things that won't, I can tell you about those and warn you, but there are so many permutations of things, there are so many right answers. And when you come to me and say your last teacher said you can only put a wash on by using a brush from left to right, it's so strict. No, it doesn't have to be that way, and you know, there's no one right answer in art or photography. There are so many ways to do things, and that's great. This is why we love mixed medium. I do say not mixed media, you know what to think about that. Media is the press, medium is the material. It's mixed medium, we use them how we want. So let's talk a little bit about photographs and how we can use them. Let's show how I use them. I mean, you've got little mobile phones now. Not only can you take photographs with those phones, many of them take video. And I'm going to show you a film here that I took only the other day over the other side of the river, the Humber, just into Hull, and it was the farmer's market and it was raining. So you don't want to take cameras out in rain, although I've got my GoPros which we go underwater, and I can show you some shots from the GoPros that are superb. So we've got different cameras now, and they're so reasonably cheap. There's clones on the market now of these cameras. You can buy quite cheap underwater cameras. So many things you can buy. Second-hand cameras now going for almost nothing. There's no excuse not to have a cheap digital camera now. But what I'm going to discuss is not only the use of those cameras and the shots we can take, as in this case with the market, I'm just able to walk around the video, not even just taking still shots, but just walking around with the video, just pointing it in the general directions without offending people too much, with it underneath the umbrella, and I've got these wonderful shots for my watercolour paintings of reflections in the market. It's great because you can grab frames off a film. Now the software I tend to use is Pinnacle 14, I've got Pinnacle 18 as well, but like Windows and like so many of these programs and like cars, I think sometimes it makes things more complicated. If they could just keep the program simple, do the additional facilities that they offer, yes. 18 has more permutations facilities, but doesn't actually do much more. I like 14 because it's so user-friendly and so easy. So I'm using Pinnacle 14 and I keep 18 as a standby. And CorelDraw as well. We've got Adobe, Photoshop and so on. Adobe's great, professional, but I find CorelDraw easier, and I'm using CorelDraw 9. Again, one of the older versions because it's so much more simple. So I would certainly recommend CorelDraw 9 and the use of mainly photo paint within that and CorelDraw within that. CorelDraw for doing your graphics and the photo paint for enhancing images and doing creative work with images. Then we take those into Pinnacle 14 and we can start using them in films as animations or as parts of things. We can add those images from CorelDraw into Word documents, so I can do all my desktop publishing. Everything I want can be done within those two programs really in the art side. And all the effects that I need, the basics are there. I don't need anything really too fancy. You can get additions to them anyway. So that's what I'm going to show you here, and those are my recommendations. We'll show you a little bit of how they're used. I won't go into too much depth. This isn't a tutorial in CorelDraw or in Pinnacle. It's just to give you artists some more ideas, and it's not so frightening. Once you've got used to these programs, most of them come with guides anyway. I mean, CorelDraw, I can teach you in 2 to 3 hours, but the basics, it took me years without the manuals to learn it, I must admit. So it's good to have somebody to help you. But if you buy it with a manual, just take some time going through. It's compound interest, it's like painting. The more you learn, the more you link it to other things. So, you know, if you're used to doing wet into wet in watercolour, then if you did it with acrylic inks, it's going to be similar and so on. So one thing will link into another, and once you find your way around a computer, once you know the basics of Windows, once you know how programs and how to store images and what images to store them in, JPEGs or TIFFs or whatever, might not mean anything to you at the moment, but we'll go into all of those things on the film, just the basics for you, and I'll give you some advice and some basic tips and show you some creative juices, some creative flavourings here that might help you to explore and take photographs and make better paintings and use these photographs as part of your tools, cameras as part of your tools for your creative work. So it's a bit of fun, and I'll just show you some examples and ways that I've been working with the camera creatively, having fun, even the films themselves becoming works of art. A little bit here I'll show you when I'm putting photographs together of an oil refinery just over the river, which is great fun as well, and how those images were used to make a little film that's an artwork in itself. There's just so many permutations. It's great fun. Let's have a look, shall we?
And finally, the picture that I produced in my 2-day residency at the Deep. I did 2, but this was a major work. Standing sentinel at the front of the building is this wonderful shark. The building in itself is very unusual and was based upon the idea of the shape of ships, as we're right next to the River Humber. There are very few works of art in the Deep as it's not felt the direction they wish to go, but I am honoured to have this one picture of mine hanging there permanently. This is the area that I was going to centre my painting upon, in this Perspex tunnel, looking up at these gorgeous blues, the fish going right over and above us, the huge sharks coming out at us, and this feeling of actually being underwater. Let's look at some worksheets that I did for the Deep earlier on and for use with students. Here we can see the use of complementary colours, that fish actually use the opposites in the colour circles themselves to be attractive or to give warning. How we can use the shots we've taken in there to abstract from. We can use them on the computer and turn them into abstract art. We can use the textures for patterns, we can use the textures for fabric, we can use the textures for pottery. We're going to see some examples of my pottery actually done from that later. We can take the shoals of fish and turn them into patterns, we can change the colours around, and you'll see one of my paintings earlier that was done with the gold leaf and that particular shoal of red amongst it. Translucency and transparency, how on earth to show that, like glass, that a fish is semi-transparent. And of course, where we can take the directions for sculpture and pottery. We can take these forms of shells, we can take the forms of fish, and we can use them, as I have here, to build ceramics and sculptural forms from afterwards. I've already discussed scale with you, and here we have that example again, and how we can have a large object in front of a small or small in front of large to give the size of things. Camouflage and pattern in the way that we can use dots or squares or patterns or textures or shapes and make a picture out of those. I did this as an example to show how a zebra or tiger works in the fact that they hide by camouflaging broken shapes. And finally to show that anything repeated makes a pattern. You can see the design more clearly now. There's my large black oval of blackboard. So when I've thought about this for many weeks, I've got most of it in my head ready to just go ahead. It's only a matter of technically accomplishing that image onto the board. What you will also notice here is that I'm not just completing one area and finishing it. I'm working all over the board as I would with a normal painting.
I'm just going to put some written tips up here just to help you and aid you with your travel through your journey with photography and computers. Well, there we go. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll make use of these photographs. There are hundreds more on my site, and I've got hundreds more here. By all means, use them in any way you wish to do watercolours, pastels or whatever else. As you'll see in my website, many of them I've used already, and some of them I'm still using. Some of them are quite recent. I've got many more. Enjoy, explore, experiment. It's better to work from plein air, I think, in the whole. I prefer working from actual life, and out there the atmosphere is better, the light's better, it's more challenging. But with English weather as it is, and with certain subjects such as figures or animals or children, it's very hard to work just from life, isn't it? So here we are, I offer you these, have fun, and I hope these few tips have helped you. I haven't gone into depth on the art programs or the photography programs. It's not a full tutorial on how to use each and every one. It was just a film to get you enthused, to get you interested, to show you what can be done and that you can do it as easily as I can.